Yeah. Hey. Hey. All right. Hey. Yeah, I mean.
So we about to take off.
Hey. Please do remain calm. About to run against spitting with a little bit of soul, no times.
Welcome to Please Remain Calm. I'm Ben Gonzalez.
And I am Daniel Gonzalez. As always, folks, the opinions expressed here on the Please Remain Calm podcast are our own. They do not reflect the opinions of the Los Angeles City Fire Department or the Los Angeles County Department of Health Services.
And if you are watching this on YouTube, you might notice we have the return of headphones in this episode, you guys.
I cannot tell you how excited I am to have headphones back on. Our guest does his own podcast, and we're going to introduce him in just a few minutes here. But when we got here, he goes, "Oh, you guys don't use headphones, huh?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
A light bulb went off in Danny's head.
Not because I don't want them. I love having the headphones on because it like locks you into like the conversation that you're having it with everybody. It feels like, man. And then when you're like not talking, and you can hear when the like volume goes down. I don't know. It just feels, or maybe it's just I like hearing my own voice in my head.
I don't know, but I hear us anyways. I just got used to, because in this studio where we film the podcast, Petty Cash Studios,
shout out.
headphones are optional. Yeah. You know what I mean? You have to especially request the headphones, and then you have to get the cables out. Hang on, guys. Plug everything in. You got a buzz in them.
Oh, there's a buzz.
It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing.
But Danny is ecstatic.
I am ecstatic. I'm happy that we have him on. I really am. Before we get started here, it's our second week back. Thank you for coming back and listening to us. I know it's going to take a minute to get everybody like back on the horse that we have new episodes coming on. That's what kind of sucks about like missing so long, is that like, I don't know, for those of you that don't know, like the podcast world is kind of like all depends, like if it all kind of all depends on like how many downloads you get and how many views you get and stuff like that. And when you're, we had a couple of years there where people were sending us like their end of the year, like, where Spotify shows you like your favorite podcasts or like the ones you listen to the most, and people were sending us like, "Oh, please remain calm." We're like, "Fuck yeah," But you're like on their lists of podcasts. Like when they open Spotify, it's like you're their preferred podcast on there. Yeah. And so when you're not on there when you don't have an episode for 2-3 weeks and people stop like listening regularly, then you drop off of their favorites, and then you're kind of like, they kind of like have to go and look for you again to bring it back up. So
the other thing too is there's a threshold of downloads monthly that gets you, sponsorships and things like that. And you've got to be consistent to do it. Yeah. And so when we took a drop off, like, we just, we lost our number a bit. So we got to get it all back up, and we forget things that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah. Consistency is key. And so it's hard when you miss, but like, it's like I said last week, man, like 111 episodes, episode 112.
Yeah.
112.
And we cranked out like the first 99 over 2 years.
Yeah.
And then
weekly episodes.
Drove it off a cliff.
So it's hard, man. It's hard to maintain, but we're here again, second week in a row.
The relaunch.
We've got a great guest today. We've got a couple of really good guests coming up over the next few weeks. Yeah. One thing that did happen over our hiatus was Ben here put out his comedy special.
Yep. My special released on YouTube, trying to get it on a streamer. Turns out not a lot of new specials on streamers. There was a list of like the 35 new comedy specials that were out, like released the month that mine was, or the month before March, right? Because mine was released April Fool's Day, right? And 33 of them were on YouTube.
Oh, really?
And they're all like big comics, like that have albums, have Comedy Central specials, have been on Netflix already. Yeah. And they're just, everyone's like releasing specials directly to YouTube now.
I wonder why that is. If it's just because it's a lot more freeing and you have way more control over what happens with it, or they're just not buying specials anymore.
It's both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the name of your special?
My special is called Full Custody, Full FOOL.
Full FOL. I was there when we recorded it. It is hilarious. The guys at my station, obviously I'm like promoting it for you around the firehouse. All the guys, we watched that at the firehouse and in the TV room. Everybody loved it. So if you guys haven't seen it already, go search it up on YouTube. Tell your friends about it. It's hilarious. Not only that, like it, subscribe to Ben's page, all that stuff. All that stuff helps him to get it out there a little bit more and get it seen more.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's gotten a lot of great feedback. I'm like really happy with it. We had an awesome production team. It was released. It's on the Grande Comedy YouTube page. Grande Comedy produced all of the major HBO Latino comedy specials. A bunch of big Latino comics are on that page, and my clips and my specials up there with them, and it's awesome, man.
It's hilarious. It really is. Make sure you guys go out and check it out. Also, if you're already going to be on YouTube, you might as well check out the Please Remain Calm podcast page. Subscribe if you haven't already. Tell your friends about it. Like the episodes, comment. All that stuff helps us grow the podcast still a little more. Actually, right now, it could probably get us back on the horse and get us running down the track again. But yeah, share it. All that stuff helps us grow as a podcast. Same thing with Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you guys listen to us. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. It all helps us grow. As
that
a podcast.
was some seamless cross promotion.
Yeah. Oh,
You know what I mean?
we're getting good at this, dude.
Yeah.
110 episodes.
We're ready to weave in a third entity now.
You know what it is?
Cross promotion.
It's the headphones. It's the headphones.
Yeah, it's a new energized Danny.
All right. So our guest today, 110 episodes, 111 episodes in, you feel like you've seen the fire department through like damn near every angle that you could see it through. It used to be like when our dad was on the job, late 70s throughout the 80s, back when men were men, and firefighters still went through the same issues. I mean, they were still seeing the same amount of death. They were still being sleep deprived. They were going through all the same things that we're going through, but it was a different time back then. There really wasn't an avenue, it felt like, to talk about men's mental health. Everything, if you were going through something, going through a divorce, going through whatever could be happening outside of the fire department in your everyday life, or taking things from the fire department home with you, there really wasn't like a clear-cut avenue for a guy to tell anybody like, hey, I'm going through mental health issues right now.
Yeah.
And so to see that kind of start to change over the past, decade or so, where they're creating different avenues for you to be able to talk. And part of that is because of the fucking epidemic of suicides and self-harm things that are going on within fire departments across the country over the past decade. But departments seem to have leaned a little bit more into trying to help guys and gals get through mental health issues that are on the job, and there are avenues that have been created that weren't there before in the past.
Yeah, and to touch on what you're saying, like, it's not even that just there weren't avenues there available before. Like, it was active culture against it.
Yeah,
against not saying anything, about not being soft.
Oh yeah, dude.
You know what I mean? Like, that's how we were raised, basically.
Yeah,
it wasn't even just like outside issues. Even like the firefighting, like they've just found ways to make you, less of a man or soft. Or like, you don't want to speak up about anything.
And that's, it sounds crazy, but it's true. It was a completely different department back then in many ways. But I think just society as a whole, you know what I mean? Like, all of our action heroes were like, Stallone and Arnold, and it was how many people could you kill? How many people could you blow up? I mean, everything was misogynistic, we put Monster Squad on for the boys, kids movie that we loved when we were kids. And I put it on and played it. And like the beginning, the kid's getting bullied and he's like, hey, faggot, and it's like, whoa, it was like jarring, to watch. But that was the norm in society back then. And firefighting was a man's profession, and it was manly men that did it. And if you wanted to be respected, you had to be the manliest of men, and men didn't talk about that shit. So, when I came across the Grablives podcast, and I think when we first started our podcast, there really weren't any weren't many, if any, firefighter podcasts kind of out when we started.
Yeah, and we had to decide like how we were going to go with ours, because there could be like just where you're talking about technical aspects of the job, or only life or death, and we wanted to get into everything. And so like a big part of it too was just, as firefighters or paramedics, the shit that you have to deal with that they don't teach you about in school, basically, that you only learn from going through it. And
that's kind of like where, like for me at least, like going through the fire department and being a part of LA City Fire for pretty much our entire lives, because our dad was obviously on the job. I don't know, man. I always looked at the fire department different. I never looked at it the same way as like I never treated rookies bad. You know, I never made the fire department like my entire identity, like a lot of people, like a lot of younger guys tend to do. You know what I mean? You get the fucking fire license plate on your truck and a big sticker on your thing, and it becomes like your identity, and all your friends are firefighters and stuff like that. I never really like, I don't know, man. I always seem to like always think of the fire department as like my job that I do because they pay me. And I never really like fell in love with it in that way. And I'm glad because it's helped me as I grew as a man, as I got older, and I kind of like got away from ego and like stopped giving a shit what people thought about me and stuff like that. It helped me to like understand that there's a lot more to this fire department to being a part of a fire department than what I was seeing on social media. Most of the posts were obviously the like raw, you know, fire department, hardcore fire department stuff. And it was like, there's shit about this department that kind of sucks, or, you know, or about this job that kind of sucks. And we did that episode, you know, what sucks about being on the fire department. And so looking at it from different angles and talking about things that aren't normally talked about, I think is one of the things that helped make this podcast somewhat successful and that people enjoy listening to. So when I came across the Grablives podcast, and it kind of, you know, anytime there's a new firefighter podcast that pops out, I like to check it out and see what it's all about. And it was refreshing to see this kind of like, you know, I didn't know John before. Our guest today is John Vargas. He's the host of the Grablives podcast and a LA City firefighter, and an advocate for a lot of different things that we're going to get into today. But yeah, go ahead and say hi, John.
What's up, everybody?
Okay, so that voice right there, right? I was like, who the fuck is this guy? Right? I was like, this is like some, you know, ASMR shit right here. And I was like, this is like, I was like, dude, I really feel like I could close my eyes.
LAFD.
Yeah. It's like I could close my eyes and just like get lost in this podcast. And then, you know, started listening to it and saw a couple episodes and what you guys were doing. And it's kind of like, I call it just kind of like a holistic approach to firefighting and to mental health and stuff like that I didn't think anybody was really talking about. So I thought it was really interesting, man, and wanted to get you on. And we have kind of had a back and forth about trying to get it on each other's podcast and figure it out. And so I'm really glad that you're here today, man.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it, man. And you know, like I really take this seriously. You know, the times I speak on other people's podcasts, I take very seriously because our time is valuable, and I know how hard it is to just get a schedule in to do an episode. And it's so valuable to show up and talk and connect and really expand on an awareness with what is happening. And I think right now, people are now seeing through the demise of others how important it is to bring up what's happening. And I really just want to make it known like it's happening, and it takes people to reach suffering, to want to get help and to want to change. And that means we're already behind. And so all the agencies, all the city departments, they don't know what to do. They're bombarded and overwhelmed because they really don't have an answer. Yeah. And so my goal is to create answers and to create noise to make people think outside of the normal paradigm of what you guys were talking about, right? This old way of thinking. Sure. And we really have to get out of that and escape that part of what we thought was known for mental health and white knuckling, you know, things like chronic pain. Yeah. And intrusive thoughts. Push it doesn't work, man. And it's going to manifest in physical dis-ease. Yeah. You know, and it's going to create other things, just because you think your mental health is okay, but then later down the road you retire and you have cancer or whatever. Sure. My personal viewpoint is like, you know, this is a repressed emotion that's really bottled up to present itself to an injury or an illness that you haven't listened to your body with. And yeah, man, I just really value you guys and being able to, you know, express the same topics, you know, you're talking about stuff, and it's great, dude. And that's what we need, is people to be open about it. Cool, man. Well, really appreciate you coming in. We're going to kind of take a path to get to, really what John, what his real passion is with the podcast and with what he does outside of the podcast as well. I always like to just at the beginning of the podcast, man, anytime we have a firefighter on, everybody has their own story, obviously, how they came to
to be in this profession. Just kind of take us through what sparked your interest in being a firefighter and what path you took to getting to where you are right now.
Yeah, for sure, man. I really resonate with you guys. I mean, you guys are, grew up Chicano and grew up in the city and in this environment of Southern California. And that's where I grew up. That you don't really meet that many people who actually grow up
that's
in
true,
this
man.
area.
Yeah.
There's so many people who come to a transplant, right? And they now they have all these things like all the homeless people, this, and that. And I'm like, bitch, you never fucking grew up here. I can say the F word, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Say whatever
Like you
you want.
didn't grow up here. Now you come into my town and start complaining. So I have my own opinions about that shit, but
go back to where
in general,
you came from.
I grew up here, and back in the day, man, I would come to downtown LA and it'd just be like tumbleweeds going through the streets. It was empty
for sure.
What
part of LA did you grow up in?
Well, I grew up in Long Beach and parts of Downey, and so greater LA County area. But my parents, they grew up cholos, in Norwalk, California, and Whittier, and so my parents, kind of grew up in that environment. And so, very interesting way to grow up. But my parents took me out of that environment. They saw that, it would have been the end of my, my life if I would have ended up following their path. So, I grew up not having much, man. And I think I took the role as being a firefighter as a gateway to get my family out of, not having much. We struggled financially for such a long time. And I saw that as an avenue to really move forward. And I had a cousin, or I still have a cousin who works for LA City. So he kind of helped me and guided me down the path.
Okay.
So I saw it as a ticket, to help my family in a way, but going through my path, it was pretty interesting because when I was trying to get hired, it was the recession and everything was frozen.
So you're talking like, what
2008, 2009 was like when I started, doing all the classes and X, Y, and Z.
Kind of a weird time to start too, because the city didn't have any money.
Exactly.
Right? So the hiring process was affected by that too.
So it's different from what it is now, compared to back then. Everyone worked really hard to build their resume and do all the things they wanted to do and gain the stuff under their belt to get the job. And it took me about 8 years until I got hired by LA City. And, I did a lot of, grunt work. I worked for the Forest Service for a couple years in Washington State, Oregon.
Wow.
And, I fought wildfires all over the western side of the States. And it was hard work, man.
That is hard ass work, dude.
I know, dude.
Hard ass work. So were you seasonal with them or were you year round? Yeah.
And then I would work, as an EMT. And then, as I did the Forest Service stuff, it paid for me to go to paramedic school. So I became a paramedic prior. So I really did a lot of work and fortunately, those things taught me how to really budget my money when I didn't have any money. Yeah. So now when I have the things that I do have, I really don't take it for granted. There's a much more of gratitude with what I do have. And it taught me a lot.
Where did you go to paramedic school?
In Riverside.
In Riverside. Okay.
Yeah. So I was out there.
For those of you that are like trying to think like, what's the next thing I can do? Or, I've taken these classes, I got my EMT. What's something that I can really work on? Forestry, man, seasonal forestry. Yeah. Like in all honesty, especially these days with climate change and the way that the fire seasons are going these days. I mean, shit, there's a wildfire going on in Gorman right now that's been going on for the past 4 or 5 days. That's happening every damn year this year, and the fire seasons are starting sooner, ending later. And so a lot of stations, even within our department, are going to a lot more brush fires. And brush fires are kind of funny. And I'm just going to breeze through this real quick. Brush fires are kind of funny because like you could be the rookie on an engine company. And you could have a captain that's got 10 years on the job, an engineer that's got 12 years on the job, and a 7-year fireman, with the handlebar mustache, who's the baddest motherfucker on a structure fire, and go to a brush fire, and you're the dude with the most experience. If you've been to a couple seasons, with forestry or something like that, and everybody's going to look to you. Hey man, what do you think? What they're going to be asking for your advice. So if you guys are looking for something to do to really bolster yourself in what the fire department is evolving into. Obviously, paramedic is one, but seasonal firefighting, wildland firefighting is something that I think the guys that I've known on the job that have done that job really are really leaned on when it comes to going to actual brush fires and stuff like that. So it's an avenue to definitely look into going. But
yeah, we were coming up. It was CDF.
Yeah,
and then
CDF.
it's Cal Fire now, and then those guys are like regular, like paid firefighters now.
Yeah.
They have, like,
Yeah.
full-time
Some of them
jobs.
are.
Yeah.
But that is back-breaking work, dude. Like,
Yeah, dude, it's hard work, man. And you know what was cool though is I met a lot of interesting people, especially when I was out of state, who didn't take the firefighter identity. You know, it was just a role that you played,
yeah,
but they took it professionally serious, you know, but it taught me a lot. And so I had a lot of mentors through that journey and gained a lot of beautiful relationships to where, you know, I learned, you know, this is not an identity you take on. It's something you use as a role to kind of show up, you know, and that taught me a lot as I went into a serious, you know, city department like LA City, who's very busy and they have a culture ingrained. And so prior to that, it was cool and refreshing for me to not have that ingrained into my system.
Yeah.
You know, and it really showed me the value of who I am and the identity I already carried prior.
Yeah.
And the merit that I held, you know, and it just changed things for me, you know, my internal narrative, the way I describe things and the way I showed up for myself as a probationary member. And it's palpable. You can see when someone's acquired that over their journey of life. And, you know, that for me, I was taught by very, very important people. And that's the cool part about this journey is along that journey, you meet a lot of interesting people along the way. And if you have been fortunate enough to come across people who taught you well, it's great, man. And through that too, I've met so many people who've been dispersed, you know, as become police officers, other firefighters, other departments. So when I started this podcast, guys would reach out to me like, hey, John, like I've heard you, dude, like it's crazy, you know? And I just know so many people for other departments now and it's great. So yeah.
See, I was wondering that, like, did your time of the forestry, like, kind of set you on the path to more holistic view of things and connect to
being
nature more,
being out in wilderness
and being in Washington, Oregon, you know?
Yeah, I think I've always been, you know, ingrained in Eastern philosophy and, you know, looking towards other ways of thinking.
Yeah.
And describing, you know, our reality, our inner truth. And I've always, you know, grabbed onto that way of thinking. So starting when I was in Washington, a lot of the guys we'd pass around books, and a couple books came into my lap, and some guy would be like, hey man, you should read this book. And one of them was like, he was like a scientist who like was super brilliant, and all he wanted to do was make money during summer and he'd go back to his job. And so he taught me a lot about consciousness and understanding the value of the self. And so some of these books and teachings came from him and other friends in that same crew, which is interesting because that crew, how we came across a really traumatic incident where two of our guys in our crew ended up dying in a car accident.
Oh wow!
In that season that cut our season short.
Was it involved with an incident, like went off a cliff, or was it just a random thing?
We just lived like kind of in this desolate area in the mountains, and that's where our station was. And we were, you know, coming back from working whatever, like 30 days straight. Yeah, had 2 days of paid rest, and a lot of times we'd go shoot shotguns and drink beer. That's what we would do. Yeah. It's like, what else can you do over there, you know? And so they went off and they were doing that same thing, and there's no lights or anything like that in the middle of the woods. So they drove off basically a cliff and went to a ditch and died.
Golly.
God damn.
That sucks. Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the inherent dangers of being in a wildland assignment like that too. Because there have been firefighters, you know, active LA County firefighters that have had that same thing happen to them at incidents.
Yeah, drive off a cliff.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think it's really interesting to like have real life experiences like that, and something like the forestry, which is almost like similar to like being in the military, where you have guys that come in from all different walks of life to do this seasonal work, and it's like where you grew up in the city, and maybe you might be on a crew with the guy from Texas, guy from Arkansas, or whatever that flew in to work the season. And you learn a lot about people. You learn about a lot of differences about how people were raised, and I think those experiences really help you in our profession, because it's really easy to get jaded and like look at somebody and be like, oh, look at this fucking drug addict or whatever, this guy OD'd or whatever. And it takes experience and life experience and a little bit of like hitting your own like lows in your life and stuff like that to understand I don't really understand what the hell is going on in this guy's life. You know what I mean? I'm only going to be here. I'm only going to be in this person's life for maybe 15, 20, 30, maybe an hour waiting at the hospital or whatever. Can I be a positive influence on their life, or am I going to look at them with kind of blinders on and call them a piece of shit because that just happens to be how they're presenting to me right now, you know? And I think it took life experience. It took like having my own lows in my life to realize that everybody has ups and downs in their lives. Everybody has lives that are just as complex and as mine, you know what I mean? And that understanding, kind of like losing your ego a little bit that way, I feel like it's really helped me in my profession to like connect with patients and get the most out of. Obviously, you're gonna meet some people who are just assholes, you know what I mean, or want to be.
But that's also part of like why you have this job, because like you needed to have that understanding, so this like gives it to you.
Yeah, for
you know
sure.
What I mean, and it helps you too for acting.
You know what I mean? Definitely.
Because you're tapped into all these different realities.
It is like a really good way to just like see and we've talked about this before, like the human condition in general, and just like we are like sociologists, man.
Yeah. There's so much that you can appreciate that's in front of you with this job, like, you know what I mean, if you're looking for it.
And I've met so many different types of people and types of personalities, and you kind of learn how to deal with each different type. And so when you meet somebody, it's like, okay, what type of person are you?
And like how he's talking about with coworkers, even within the job. You know what I mean? We try to have that with guests, like because there's different archetypes of firefighters, right? We've got to have every different kind, you know, on the show. Yeah. But now we're seeing too, like we were saying in the beginning, there were other firefighter podcasts. Now there's multiple ones, and there's different archetype firefighter podcasts now. You know,
dude, it's
like
an arena
guys.
It's an arena of human behavior, man.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, and you actually can be if you tune into it, you could really learn a lot about yourself and how you show up, you know, in that arena. And it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing, is like we were talking about how it was so one dimensional through like the 70s and 80s. And now like we're here and like, you know what I mean, it's a whole spectrum.
For sure.
It's cool.
Yeah. It's funny. And it's funny watching the change, right? Because I have 20 years on now. And so when I first started in 2003, when I got hired, there was still the remnants of that really macho, you know, rah, still treated the rookies like shit, all that stuff, right? And the evolution just of like society and like inclusion, you know, the inclusion of the LGBTQ community, the hiring of a lot more females on the job, all that stuff is like, there's no stopping it. I mean, society is going to change. There's no stopping that ball from rolling. So it's super crazy. And then being in like social media and like having, you know, like I started one of the first like Instagram pages for 63s, was like one of the first like station Instagram pages, and posting all that stuff. And I can remember guys like even when I was just posting on my own thing, posting things about the fire department, because I love taking pictures and videos and stuff like that. I can remember guys being like commenting on my shit, tagging other people and going, look at this, you know, look at this dork or whatever, or like don't be like this guy or shit like that. And I'm just like having fun, you know, and engaging and seeing those guys that used to, you know, tag people and talk shit about what I was posting on social media, now having their own social media presence and like doing the same things that I was doing, you know, a while back. And I'm happy to see them doing it, you know, because they're actually helping people, or they have like a good page where they're, you know, instructing younger guys or whatever, shining a positive light on the fire department.
But you were talking shit.
But you were talking shit. And then also like just like older firefighters or guys that had just like retired. Yeah. Like Crystal, for instance, right? She posted a post on her page where, you know, she just got done with paramedic school. She's at 65s and she's like dancing around on the app floor, right? It's like 2 a.m. 30 runs they've run on the fast response or whatever. And she's having fun dancing on like, hey, we're delirious. We're dancing on the, and it's like, everyone's like, if you know Crystal, she's super cool. We've had her on the podcast. She's got her own like fitness following too, and just a super like positive energy person, female that actually can do the physicality of the job and stuff like that. She's just a really good person. And you see people like, you know, commenting positive stuff, and then there's one crusty, you know, engineer from, you know, somewhere back east. It's like, oh, it's pretty unprofessional for you to be dancing. It's like,
dude, people are threatened by joy.
They really are, man.
You know what I mean?
And even that, it's like, you know, it's like, damn, what's going on in your life that, you know what I mean? Exactly. Like, you know, who pissed in your coffee this morning that you're this like miserable person that you have to comment on. That's like, who gives a shit, dude? Don't be. But like seeing the evolution of social media and just like the way people are expressing themselves now, being on the job and expressing joy in different ways of being on the job is like really interesting to see. Because I lived in that world of macho man, rah, this ain't a fun job. We're serious. We're hammering everybody, to now this, like, there's all kinds of fire department comedy pages, people being silly. There's trends with the fire department all over the place now. And just seeing that transition from this to that has been kind of crazy to watch.
That's just a performance, it's just a way of like pretending to be something you're not.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't serve us anymore. This job is way too difficult for us to pretend like we have to act a certain way. It's just, it doesn't really make any sense,
Yeah. I've always told people, like, the fire department is really a comedy. It's a comedy. And every once in a while we have like super high drama where it's life and death for 20, 30, 45 minutes. And then we go back to comedy. You know what I mean? And
when he's saying like it's a performance. So it makes me think of Tyrone's page, man.
Tyrone.
Where it's like the senior firefighter. Like, this is what you look like, dude. This is how you sound. You know what I mean? Like, you're a cartoon character right now.
I love Tyrone,
like,
man.
Just stop, dude.
Worked them many a times.
He's great.
I want to kind of start steering toward how you got involved with this kind of like mental health aspect of it, and becoming a part of what Grablives is. If you're okay with it, I want to talk about your injury.
Yeah, of course,
and how that came about, and what were the repercussions of that injury.
Yeah, I mean, I really take great honor to express my story, because I think it shows light on, how people can heal, and it also heals me, and being open and truthful about my experience, I wouldn't be here without the people I've been surrounded by, my mentors, and the people who have taught me and led me to the direction I'm in today. So one of my teachers, she teaches me that, an experience you come across or an incident, that incident actually sometimes has nothing to do with the entire complexity or the entirety of the incident.
Right.
A lot of things that lead up to that moment are actually what caused what happened to you.
Yeah.
And so, going into my deeper work of myself and understanding the complexity of it, prior to my concussion, I was living a life of disempowerment and bad behaviors. I was looking back on, I was an alcoholic for 10 plus years.
Sure.
All my days off, I'd be drinking, and prior to that,
you don't even really realize it while that's going on.
Yeah. Cause you're just stuck, you're in the moment, and you're just surviving.
Yeah.
So prior to that, it was just poor behaviors, and I just work a ton of overtime. I'd go travel all over the country, all over the globe, and I'd be drinking then,
Yeah.
And so looking into that, there were some things that needed to change. And when I hit my head, that's when I had to stop all those behaviors and take a hard look at myself. So the concussion was on the job. So the injury was, a workers' comp thing. And so I had to go through the workers' comp claims and all that stuff, which was a whole nother, incident to try to figure out and navigate my health through there.
Do you mind talking about what happened?
Yeah. So it's a pretty interesting story. We had a fire break out in our district, and at that time we would have fires all the time in our district, which is going to be in East Hollywood. And so when we have a fire, the tones go off.
Where was it? 82s or
52s?
52s.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So we get up, put our shit on, right? And everyone's running to go put their stuff on, especially the rookies. And so we would get these pulse points on our phones,
sure, yeah.
You know what I mean? Trying to see, and I was driving, so I was trying to figure out where it was. And when I was going around the corner, the rookie, just the exact same time, was coming around the corner, and we clashed skulls.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. And so I got knocked down, and this kid was like, I don't blast his name, but he used to, be an NFL player.
Yeah,
he was bigger than me, but same height as me. So our heads were the same height.
Oh shit.
And so his forehead clashed against my left parietal part of my skull, which is the softest, thinnest part of your brain or your skull. And so I got knocked to the ground, and then went to the fire, and then I was dizzy, out of it. And then we had another call after that. Ended up being just like a, food on the stove type fire.
Sure.
But I had another call after that, and I was doing a 12 lead on a patient, and I was like really dizzy. And so I went back to the station, told the captain, "Hey man, I do not feel good. My head started swelling up, and then it actually affected my jaw. My whole jaw was swollen, along with the side of my head. Got transported to Cedars-Sinai, and then after that, I was just went off injury, and the only thing about that is like my scans, MRIs, all that stuff, it didn't show a bleed or anything serious.
Right.
But these are like micro tears that are going on in these things cause various symptoms to the body because it's
and your brain's just pretty much floating around in there. You take a hit and your brain bounces around.
Right. And so the brain trauma it could really affect so many different things. I mean, it sends a signal to the amygdala, and that could be on fire, and it disrupts all your hormones. It disrupts certain organs depending on the area you hit your head. So it could affect emotions. And so I was, going into a deep dive of depression after, and because I wasn't getting the proper help initially either. Yeah. And then on top of that, I was having these anxiety episodes where my system was going into fight or flight constantly. I'd be sleeping and I'd wake up in this drenched in sweat. Sure. And my heart rate would be like 100, in the middle of the night.
And you never had any experiences like that?
Never experienced anxiety in my life, man. And I'd be walking to the store down the street from my house. I just feel just like anxiety. My hands would be sweaty. My feet would be sweating. Damn. And so, these symptoms kept arising. They kept getting worse. They did not subside. And so it took me about 3 months until, I was with my girlfriend, who I'm still with now. And she was, teaching me about some of this stuff. Like I should be meditating and learning some certain things. And I didn't listen to her. I was still, having my old habits of drinking until I was like, dude, I got to stop drinking because it's making my injury worse. Yeah. And so I had to stop drinking. It
doesn't help that as workers' comp either. That's like a tough thing to navigate.
That's a whole thing that you got to like navigate around. And so I ended up going to different doctors. They kept misdiagnosing me. I had a doctor who even told me that I just have anxiety and he just prescribed me anti-anxiety medication. Yeah. And that was it, and I was like, nah, dude, this is something different. This is not what you think, Sure. Yeah. So going through that process, I started having panic attacks, to where my whole body would just go in a catatonic state. I've never dealt with that in my life. It was my nervous system that was dysregulated who would cause me to go into shock like that. Wow. And so luckily I came across an acupuncturist who was helping me, and he was teaching me what's going on, what's really happening to my nervous system. Yeah. He's like, dude, your whole nervous system is so out of whack, and I'm going to help you. And so he did help me. He started teaching me about the energetic body, how the body, operates on that level. And so I started to really dive into the other aspects of the body, the subtle energy systems, and the way our body is designed to operate on an intelligent level, really. Yeah. And so I started to do those studies. I started to really hone in on meditation and learning the power of the mind, because I started to separate the mind from the actual injury, because they were two separate things. Yeah. Because my negative thinking would stir me and spiral me into a place of panic and anxiety. So sure, yeah. I had to really anchor in with my mind, and it showed me the power of the mind and how I was able to recover. Started with that, but I still was having these, nervous system dysregulations. And so when I was going through that, I had a panic attack with my girlfriend at a Thai restaurant, and I was like, man, I need something, and she was doing Kambo prior, which is the medicine that ended up healing me. And so she kept telling me, hey, you should come do Kambo. And I was like, what is that? And she's like, well, you're going to go into a room. This guy's going to put this, frog medicine on your skin. You're going to vomit in a bucket. And I was like, I'm not doing that.
I don't think that's going to help, babe.
Yeah. And so I'm not doing that. And then it got to the point I was so desperate that I was like, hey, let's just go do some Kambo. After about, 8-9 sessions of doing Kambo, it reversed all my symptoms.
Now, what does Kambo, how did it make you feel? Like, what exactly, you said he puts this poison on your skin, it absorbs through your skin?
Yeah. So the way it works, so I am now a Kambo practitioner, going through my own healings. I went through the training, and now I serve Kambo. I've been serving it for over 2.5 years now. Okay. But it's only because I realized how powerful this medicine is. Yeah. And what it can do to reverse anything from HIV, any type of virus, Lyme's disease, anxiety, depression, across the board.
Did you feel relief from your symptoms like right away? Was it an instant thing, or was it something that kind of
it was like layers, you know, it because Kambo can only do so much in so little time. So it's a treatment based thing. So after, you know, and it depends on the severity of your biological imbalance, because all Kambo is doing is putting things into balance.
Okay.
So Kambo is going to go through the skin. It's not necessarily poison. It's a secretion that carries these bioactive peptides on a cellular level of this medicine. Okay. And so the way it works is it goes into the lymphatic system and it starts cleaning out the toxins out of your body through the lymph in your body. And then it starts to go into your cells and it starts to remove any bad bacteria, any PTSD, trauma, and then replaces it with these peptides. And it cycles through your body in 40 minutes. So in that process, you start to feel really sick, and you can go through some emotions that can come up as well. Yeah. And so when that happens, you will purge, meaning you will vomit out in a bucket. And so in my experience, I've seen, you know, really large tapeworms come out in buckets.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. And then you see a lot of like candida, which is like, you know, fungus in our gut that doesn't really help. It's overgrowing in our bodies. And then the buckets can be different colors, from green to blue to red to pink to green, yellow. Wow. And across the board, whatever's sitting in your body, it's going to come out. And so
the same thing happens with the ayahuasca too, right?
Ayahuasca is a little bit different. I mean, it is a purge. It's if you take it to a greater perspective, it's whatever is not resonating in your system. It's going to come out. Okay. And it's a beautiful release to where when you have something leave your body, it's something that doesn't resonate to your system. It's not in balance. Yeah. That's what Kambo's doing. It's actually using the intelligence of your body to release something.
Yeah. I realized that, and we talked about different generations and shit. I realized that this might sound crazy to some people that are listening, as older people or people that just haven't like exposed themselves to these sorts of things. I will say, before we get any more into it, I personally feel like, and I'm not sure, I mean, would you say that Kambo gives you any type of like psychedelic experience, or is this just more like a where you feel cleansed and it makes you feel that kind of cleansed, clean feeling?
I mean, it's a good point. It's been referred to as an entheogen, you know, so some of these plant medicines like ayahuasca, iboga, they're classified not as a psychedelic, because that's a misnomer. It's actually an entheogen. And so Kambo is also in alignment with that same category. And what entheogen is that it allows you to go to higher planes of consciousness to exceed what is not residing in this plane of consciousness. Right. So Kambo is not psychoactive, but it takes you to that level of understanding. That makes sense.
I'm like super fascinated by that. Right. Yeah. Because in my life, and we've talked about this in past episodes, I've had high highs in my life and super low lows, the lowest of lows. Right. We've had experiences with my younger brother when we went on a cruise down to Mexico, and had this guide with us on Carlos and I went on like a snorkeling trip, and this girl was like straight up like indigenous Mexican, like from the hills, and we were talking about all these things like kind of shamanistic types of things in her tribe and stuff like that. And Carlos, at that time, I was just like you, had all these bad habits. You know, I was a alcoholic, drug addict at the time, and Carlos asked her like, what can I do for my brother? How can I help my brother? And she just told him sometimes people have to hit rock bottom before they'll realize that they need to better themselves. For sure. And I definitely got to that point in my life after that. But I will say, in my life, I've had probably 3 or 4 psychedelic experiences with LSD or psilocybin, you know, as a teenager and as a younger adult in my 20s. I would say like those experiences, it's hard to experience. It's hard to explain to somebody who's never done them just how eye-opening an experience like that is to what this world has to offer that we close ourselves off to, if that makes sense. It helped me to be way more understanding and open to people, to energies, to vibes. Like if I meet somebody and I can I almost feel like I can feel when somebody's energy and vibe is just not gonna jive with mine, and I know to distance myself from them. Or if I feel like I can like meet somebody who kind of leans or is presenting that way, but like, God, there's like really somebody positive under there, or there's somebody like that. There's some kind of connection there where maybe I can pull this out of this person and I create a relationship there. It's opened me up to really just being like open to different people, different personalities, different ways of living, understanding, just like I said earlier, that like everybody's life is super complex and has their own ups and downs, and who the fuck knows where you're meeting them in their, you know, in their life journey. Are they on their way down? Are they on their way up? But I feel like those experiences in my life are some of the most profound experiences that I've ever had, as far as like having a full grasp and understanding of really what it means to be a human being, you know, and understanding that there are different levels of consciousness that, you know, to the potential of, you know, maybe we are able to take ourselves to these higher levels, or vibrations, how important vibrations are to you and how centered you are and all that stuff. It's like, and I'm rambling now, but
he's getting the frogs right now, dude.
Yeah, dude. But like, it's fascinating
Yeah.
to me, and it's not something that is talked about in our profession, or on a platform like this, really, where you're going to have people, you know, in this profession like listening to it and stuff like that. But it is something that is prevalent. I mean, I feel we're not the only ones that have done it, that look to that sort of thing for help. I just think people don't talk about it as much because it's still kind of
people don't understand it,
weird.
you know, and people are threatened by things they don't understand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so even going back to, you know, the beginning of my process, you know, I didn't just put all my eggs in one basket with Kambo.
Yeah.
I stacked my treatments. So that was one of the big thing too, is like a brain injury is really serious, and to stack your treatments is the best place to kind of find healing and balance with everything. So Kambo's great. I mean, it rewired my nervous system. That's one of the things that happened in Kambo. There are 3, you know, bioactive peptides that are neurological. So in Kambo, that can happen. It can rewire your whole system in about 3 minutes, which I've seen and witnessed happen as well.
Yeah.
But aside from that, you know, I still, you know, went through my process of finding out how I can help myself. And luckily I met some interesting people who've been in the traumatic brain injury field where it's happened to them, and they would say, hey man, call this person, they'll do it for free, go to that facility, and it'll help. Like hyperbaric chambers were one of the big things.
Yeah.
And learning how to maneuver my brainwaves from alpha to theta, because if we're in an alpha brainwave state, we're always in this constant analytical thinking and you're not at rest.
Yeah.
So the whole point is like, you need to come into this alignment neutral place with yourself. And for a brain injury to fully heal, you have to be in that state. So your body's not in this fight or flight constantly. And our job is always in fight or flight. That's why topics like hypervigilance, that thing comes up for people, because we're always on alert.
Yeah. Even when you're not working.
Yeah.
Like I'm constantly, like when I'm driving on the freeway, I found myself like constantly looking on oncoming traffic. You know what I mean? Is a tire going to fly over? I'm always like thinking a worst case scenario.
And that's not normal.
Shit weighs on you. Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
It's definitely not normal.
Yeah. So that awareness to that is really important to understand. Like some of these things that they're ideas and concepts that are barely like new. You know, these therapists are now realizing, hey, I cannot treat a firefighter or a police officer the way I'm treating these other clients.
Right. Exactly.
And it has to be a cultural competency of the therapist to actually meet that person where they're at as well, which is one of the bigger things. But going back to traumatic brain injury, it's a silent epidemic. People go years without realizing that a lot of their hormonal imbalances, because it could really reduce testosterone. It could cause a lot of issues that you are unaware of, but it's a silent injury. So you're unaware that it's actually going on. And the thing with it too, is you can do a brain scan, and someone who's had severe trauma can have an exact brain scan of someone who's had severe blunt trauma to the head. So there's something going on here that is really fascinating to understand. Like, and we have to have more proper education on what's actually happening, because we don't have the proper education. You know, we're seeing it from a different perspective that's limited, and that expansion beyond that is happening now, but it's going to take the proper guidance and the proper, you know, education, like I had mentioned, like that we need to have. And Kambo is very strange. And to the common person, they're gonna be like, dude, you're gonna throw up in a bucket? Like, what the fuck? But you will trust a doctor who's gonna get a scalpel and cut you open and expose your organs and then pull stuff out of you. So what perspective are you more inclined to? It's a cultural perspective that we're putting these allopathic doctors and trusting them outside of trusting ourselves. And that's the beautiful thing of Kambo, is that it's actually you doing your own work and showing up for yourself, which is so powerful because you're doing your own healing.
Yeah. The other thing that fascinates me, dude, is like ancient civilizations and the different things that they would do to heal themselves, right?
Yeah.
And how all of that was lost with like the conquistadors coming, you know, and basically like destroying all of the history of like the Aztecs, Mayans, all that stuff, right?
For sure.
And what was lost there? You know what I mean? That exactly.
All over the world, yeah.
It's fascinating to me, and we're so like you know, obviously the human brain is super susceptible to suggestion and brainwash and all that stuff. And we're so brainwashed into thinking that like Western medicine and medication is the only way to heal things these days. And just what is out there that's been lost to history, that's like the true connected to earth and, you know, natural ways to heal things. Fascinates me.
Yeah. See, and that's what he gets into on
Grablives.
Grablives podcast, you guys. Because it's fascinating stuff, and even the title Grablives, it goes into like what you're saying here, that like you don't know until it's too late, and you don't start, like, you're already behind the curve when you start to realize that you need to heal. And like in your case, your story, you literally got hit in the head.
Yeah,
you know, it had to hit you in the head before you're like, oh shit, what am I doing?
I wanted to touch on the peer support within the LAFD. I saw that you were involved with peer support group. I remember when that came out, and they were looking for people that wanted to be involved with that program. What has been your experience with that? Was there like a training that went along with that? Have you had to respond to be peer support for anybody since you've been involved with it? Is it still active? Can we talk about that?
For sure, man. I mean, peer support it's designed to help each other. And this is one of the major factors in the behavioral health crisis we're in right now, is that we've been severed from a connection from each other. And that part of that is from the lockdown that had occurred.
Yeah.
And so the unification of us, of who we are, you know, as blue collar workers who show up every day, who could not come home. You know, there's stuff that happens in our life that alters that connection. And so peer support is here to provide a connection to us who understand each other, who have this cultural competency. You're not a therapist, but you're there to listen.
Yeah. And
so that's an important key factor that I saw as I did the training. And so I got the CISM training, which is, I don't know exactly if it's nationwide, but I also did the IAFF training with our union.
Okay.
And then also working with our union, with the behavioral health team, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think people have a lot of blame and stuff towards the union on so many different things, but the behavioral health section is really, really valuable. And if you need help, they'll get you the help you need, man. If whether it's addiction, whether it's trauma, whether it's, you know, something simple like you're going through a divorce or whatever, and your wife kicked you out of your house, they'll provide housing for you, man, or something.
Yeah.
They will find out a person who will help you. And if it's peer support, you know, and people call me all the time, like, hey, John, I just need someone to talk to, man. And just there to listen.
Yeah.
You know, I think people just want to be heard, man. You know, they just want to be heard and be respected.
And it's a lot easier to talk to somebody that has some understanding of what our lifestyle is like.
Yeah.
Because, you know, not only do you get your ass kicked at work, or maybe, you know, obviously all the different things that we see on a daily basis, you know, we've had an episode here. What's the worst thing you've ever seen? It's like, I always tell people, like, don't ask me that. You don't want to know. You don't want to know the worst thing I've ever seen. You really don't. You know, if it's a kid, if it's this terrible, they're all terrible tragedies. We've been exposed to more than most people would ever, 10 people combined would ever see in their lifetime. I compare it to like a soldier in war, you know, the type of PTSD that they have. And just like you said, a lot of times it just goes undetected or untalked about, but we see basically what a soldier in war would see. And so, yeah, man, that peer support, it's, I think it's important for people to have somebody that has an understanding of what it, at least some understanding of what it is that they see on a daily basis and what they've been living throughout their career. That program, do you guys meet periodically, or is there upkeep with the training, or is that something that you're just like on call and they call you?
It's like on call, it depends on the person. Like if you want to be involved, I would say I'm more involved with the behavioral health side of what's going on. And I call, that I'm pretty good friends now with the behavioral health director, and we've gone to conferences and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Which has been really cool because I met so many different people who are actually wanting to help and know what's going on. And so now it's like, it's up to each person. Usually you're on a list. A lot of people have used it for promotion value.
Yeah.
And that's been a thing. And I think it's changing from that. And that peer support can be used in so many different ways. And I think people don't utilize it as much as it should. I think people need to call more when it could be something little and simple.
I don't think a lot of people realize that it's like really an option there until something happens. And then somebody says, hey, we got this program. So it's good that you're here and we're putting it out there. Because it doesn't have to be like a significant incident or something like that triggered you needing someone to talk to. It could just be, just like we said before, people have things going on in their lives outside. People go through divorces. People have sick kids. There's a ton of different things that can be going on in somebody's life. So to know that there's a program out there to have somebody that to talk to, because not everybody does, I think is really important. We're kind of coming up on time here.
Yeah.
And so sure. I definitely want to talk about podcast. You've been doing the podcast for a little while now. Trevor used to be your partner on the podcast. He's not with the podcast anymore. And so you're doing it on your own. How often do you put an episode out, and how do you determine like what it is you're going to talk about within every episode? Like, do you find a guest and then just kind of go with what they want to talk about, or do you have a plan, or do you just kind of record when you have an idea for a show?
I think it changes, like between the guest and, whatever comes up, I think my own teachings, because I still do my own inner work with myself, and I have my own mentors who teach me different things from, levels of consciousness. I am also study under a Kung Fu master who teaches me everything in Eastern philosophy and Chinese medicine on that route, and understanding the energetics of the body. And I've also dove into ancient, indigenous cultures from the Mayans to Vedic to shamanistic cultures, and the way they see life is different. And we've lost touch with that connection of how powerful we are. So I think, I think the message for Grablives is about self-empowerment, and we've had power taken from us. And it's about reclaiming that power. Yeah. And that is truly what behavioral health is about, and getting out of the victimhood mindset and blaming everything outside of ourselves when everything has to be looked on an inward scale. Yeah. So whatever topics come up, it's going to revolve around you. And like, there's this ancient Sanskrit term, it's called the Tatvamasi, you're it. And it's all about you, and all these mystics who were able to transcend consciousness and go into enlightenment. They came to this final conclusion. It's you. And so it comes down to that. It's all about you realizing that everything is a reflection that's reverberating itself back to you in your life, in your experiences, to the way you respond and react to things. And that takes a lot of responsibility. And I think that's what's the main focus on the behavioral health is focusing on the micro level, which is each individual person. Yeah. Because when we do that, we realize our self-empowerment. We're able to rise up, against the grain of what is being distorted around us, the distractions, the manipulations from administrations, from government to politics.
Advertising.
We're at a point right now where this is a war on consciousness, man. If you don't see that, and I really pray for, humanity to awaken to that, and to realize like we're being forced to go against each other. And that was the end of Rome. You know what I mean? The people tore Rome down.
Sure, man.
And Caesar just jumped in and took over. It's like he didn't have to do shit. And that's the people who are in control. That's what they want,
It's funny that you bring that up, because I've said that in the past. Like, it feels like empires they didn't just crumble in a couple of weeks. You know what I mean? It took maybe 50, 100 years for it to completely crumble and dissolve. That's what I feel like is going on right now, dude.
Hey, history is repeating itself right now.
Definitely,
and I think
dude.
how it always goes.
We're watching the beginning of the crumbling of this era that we've been in. And I can't 100% tell which way it's going to go yet, or, which way the rubble's going to fall.
Well, going into what you're talking about, like indigenous cultures from the Mayans, to these people, they all predicted that this was going to happen. There is a great prophecy from these indigenous cultures that the world is going to change on a massive scale. And that whole 2012 Mayan calendar ending was actually a prediction that the planet is going to shift in consciousness and transform into a new dimensional field.
Yeah.
And so all the things that are crumbling underneath our feet right now are all things that are not resonating with this planetary evolution.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just like, you can take this whatever you want, but if you look back on some of these teachings from the Aboriginals to the Native Americans, they all saw this happening a long time ago. And so if you look into some of the elders, the wisdom keepers of this planet, of these people who really cherished the preciousness of this planet, the consciousness we hold, they are all realizing that this is happening right now. And that's why some of these medicines are being unleashed from the jungles to come help us, get through our emotional debris and our traumas that we've carried to step into a higher state of consciousness and alignment. Yeah. Because we have to come together before we all come at each other's necks,
I feel like we could talk about this for like another 2 hours, dude. Because I feel that same way, dude. I feel like there are powerful energies on this earth that we just have tuned ourselves out to, or calcified that part of our brain that is the antenna, pick those things up. And for me, at least, positivity is a huge one for me. It feels like it opens me up to people. And it's just like you said before, man, life is just happening. It's all about how you react to it. And you putting that energy out there is going to affect the people around you as well, and affect their lives and the way life happens to them. And so all you can do is look in the mirror, you know what I mean? Improve yourself every day. And that is slowly going to improve the people around you and help them to grow. Or you have kids, you can teach them, the proper way to look at life and look at other people. Fascinating conversation with you, dude. I really appreciate you coming down and talking. And I feel like we can do this again
for sure.
And dip into more of those things. I really would love to. Go ahead and just plug the podcast, and if your Instagram or anything that you want to plug right now.
Yeah, for sure. If you're interested in Kambo or Grablives, like, you can check out the Instagram. It's Grablives_podcast. And you could message, if you need help from behavioral stuff, if you need to be plugged in with a therapist who really wants to help. And I have all of the connections that you need in order to find what you want. If you want to do Kambo, that's something that I offer as a service to others, because it's helped me so much and it's helped my girlfriend so much and it's transformed our lives. Just reach out. And, the biggest thing I would have to say, like the biggest message is, all this stuff are just tools. They're just things that are going to guide you along the way, but ultimately it comes down to you and how you behave in your life and how you take action. And so the only action I have taken in my life that's really transformed me is living in my heart. And that was a really hard thing to do, from being analytical my entire life to going into this space that's sitting in the middle of my chest that supersedes the superhuman nature and really shows connection with others and really expands on how you truly feel, how you truly operate your life, and how you truly show up for people. And that's going to change your family, your friends, your work, everything.
Cool, man. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
The whole time I'm listening to it, I'm like, this guy had cholo parents. You know what I'm saying? He got the mustache and tattoos, but it's wild, dude.
Come here, mijo. Let's be one.
Did you get a load of this logo, dude?
Yeah, no,
this is hardcore. Dude. It's like a tattoo.
It's tight.
You know what I mean? It's Thundercats vibes.
Oh, that's what you should make lick and stick tattoos. Grablives tattoos.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Where can they find you, Ben?
You can follow me at Ben9Humor, Ben number 9 Humor, like benign tumor, on Instagram and Twitter. You can follow our podcast at PRC Pod, or on Instagram, or at PRC Podcast on TikTok, or email us, contactprcpod@gmail.com.
You guys can follow me at DannyGonzo34 on Instagram. Thank you all very much for listening. Please like, share, comment on the podcast, and we will see you guys next week.
Right on.